To follow up on some more things that I experienced while living in England. I want to talk about my first day driving in England. Now, the first day that I arrived in England, I arrived like in the evening, and a sponsor from my job picked me up from the airport, and he took me to my hotel room, and I checked into there. The next morning, he came by to pick me up to take me to the office. So he picked me up, took me to the office. I met all my colleagues or whatever. And around lunchtime, he took me to the car rental place to pick up a rental car. And so when I got to the rental car place, the guy, the technician or whatever, asked me, did I want a sat nav? That's a satellite navigate GPS system. They call them sat nav. And I was like, yeah, I want one of those. And so I got one of those, and then I got my rental car. Now, I was supposed to follow my colleague back to the office. Now, I've never driven to in England at this point in time. I really didn't really know where the office was. I mean, I might have paid a little attention when he took me there. So I'm supposed to trail him, back to the office. So I'm following behind him, and then he gets on the motorway, and he takes off about 90 miles an hour, and he leaves me in the wind. And it starts raining. I can't see where I'm going, and he's nowhere to be seen. And then that so-called sat nav, I find out it doesn't work. So that's when the military training kicked in. That's when because I was on a motorway in the rain, didn't know where I was going, driving a vehicle for the first time with a steering wheel on the right side, and had to find my way back to my office. So I don't know, by the grace of God, somehow, to this day, I don't know how I found my way back to the office. I guess some of the things, I must have paid attention to how he took me there that morning. So I get back to the office, and he's sitting up in there. And I said, why did you, I said, you took off and left me, and I had to find my way back. And he's sitting there grinning like, I thought you was behind me. Okay, so I get back to the office. Okay, now, the next morning, I'm going to drive myself to the office. Now, I got up early, and it's still dark. So I'm driving a vehicle. I pull out of the parking lot where the hotel is, and I'm on a road. Okay, so this is my first time having to get over on the right side of the road and drive, because it's the opposite in the U.S. So I'm on the right side of the road, but see, now I have to get on this thing they call a roundabout. Now, a roundabout, if you don't get off on the right exit, you will be going in the wrong direction. Now, what they call exits is just another street. So you get on this roundabout, and the sat nav will tell you get off on the first exit, the second exit, or whatever. Oh, and going back, that day, the day before, when I was following my colleague on the motorway, you have to realize I didn't have a cell phone either, because my U.S. cell phone no longer worked over there, and I had to get, that was another thing that I was going to have to get later on that day, was a cell phone. So I had no communication, and I also had no any kind of navigation. So anyway, so the next morning, I'm getting on I'm having to find my way on the motorway. Now, so you have to get on this thing they call a roundabout, and you have to take whatever exit they say. Now, they call exits over there, it's just, you get on this roundabout, and the exit is really a street. Here in the U.S., when you exit, like the freeway, here you exit all the way off and you go that way. But here, that's not how it is there. So it's a circle, and you have to get off on the right one. So, and if you don't, you end up in the wrong direction. Now, first thing is, you have to wait your turn. And I thought it was like in the U.S., if you see a car coming, you try to beat it. Well, that's dangerous. You can get killed. So I shot out in front of these cars that were already inside the roundabout, and I heard all the horns blowing, and I didn't realize I was in the wrong. So that, I could have gotten killed. But anyway, so I heard all the horns blowing, so I got on this roundabout thing, and my colleagues had told me, now make sure you get off on, I guess maybe the second round exit or whatever. Well, I got off on the wrong one because it was dark. And so I ended up going to this other town. So you couldn't, once you get off on the wrong so-called exit, It's not like in the U.S. where you go, if I get off on the wrong exit, I can just get right back off and back on. Now, no, you have to keep going because there was no way to get off. So I ended up going 20 miles down to some city. I can't remember the name of the city, but I should, because this happened 3 or 4 days in a row. Because when I would leave in the morning, it would be still dark. This was like in October, so it was still dark in the morning when I would leave. So I get off on the wrong roundabout, wrong exit, and I have to go 20 miles. So I was late for work for like a week, first week. Everybody went through that. So, and then I go 20 miles out, then I turn around and come back. So that's one thing. So that was hard. But let me tell you about the driving exam. So you have to take a driver's license exam to drive over there. So that after 30 days of being in country, you have to take this exam. So my colleagues have given me this CD, to study, because you really have to study. Because it's not like in the U.S. where you have to use common sense to pass the test. Because, I've gotten driver's license in several different states, and I've never studied for the test. Because it's just common sense to just go in and take the written test, and I've always passed. But that's not the case, not in England anyway. So, they say, now, Pat, this is a tough test, because most of the people in the office had already failed it 2 or 3 times before they finally passed it. But these are the kind of questions they ask you on the test. Now, they give you all these crazy scenarios, and you're supposed to come up with the right answer. Now, they have the answers in the book, in the back of the book or whatever, or at the last part of the DVD. But just listen to the scenarios, and you tell me, does this make sense? So one of them was like, now, if you're driving through a tunnel and your car catches on fire, do you drive all the way through the tunnel and then pull over on the side and get out of your car, or do you get out right then? But what they failed to tell you, they don't specify what they mean by fire, because they don't say is it just smoking, or is there flames, and they also don't tell you the length of the tunnel. So you don't know how long. So my thing is, I just took it upon myself. I say, okay, if they're talking about, if it's just smoking, if my car's engine is just smoking, and I don't have too far to go to get out of the tunnel, okay, I can see driving all the way through and then pull it over to the side, so I don't block up the rest of the traffic. But if my car is on fire, I'm jumping out. That's common sense. I'm jumping out. Well, so that's the answer I put. I just took it as fire, and I put, oh no, that's the wrong answer. The right answer is, if your car is on fire, you just keep driving with your car on fire all the way through the tunnel and get out, because they're worried about the other cars. I don't care anything about the other cars. I don't care about anybody. If my car is on fire, I'm getting out. When you get out, that's just common sense. So that was the kind of question. Then they asked you some question about, is a blind, deaf person is trying to cross the street. Now you tell me, what blind and deaf person should be even out walking? I can understand you're blind and you have a dog, or you're deaf but you can see. But that's not going to happen. What blind, deaf person? But this is one of the questions they ask. So it's a lot of scenarios. So the test is very difficult to pass. I think I passed it on the 4th try as well. Okay, so that's the one thing. Let me tell you about adopting an animal, a pet, in the UK. Now, if you had a pet, you could take your pet over there. I don't have a pet. And some of my colleagues had pets, and what you have to do, you have to let them be quarantined for so many days and all that. And you can ship your pet over there. So I didn't have a pet. So they have all these sad commercials on television about these animals, the RSPC, RSAPC, or whatever. They got all those sad commercials. So I said, I should get a cat, because cats, they do pretty good, while you're gone. And a dog, they want more attention. I said, I get a cat. So I was at work, and I went to their website, and they had all these cute little kittens and cats. So I called the shelter, and I talked to some guy, and I told him, I said, I want to come by. Now listen to this. I said, I want to come by and pick up a kitten. He says, well, come right on. I said, well, what do I need to bring? I said, I don't have any, I don't have a little thing to carry them. He said, don't worry about that, because people have donated, the cages, and they've donated beds, and they've donated, those little trees that the cats climb on. He says, just show up. Okay, now this is what this man tells me. So I take about 2 hours vacation time off my job to go to this shelter to pick up a kitten, a cat or a kitten or whatever. So I get there, and I'm going around and I'm looking at all the cats and the kittens, and then I finally find one that I want. So I tell the guy, I say, I want this little kitten right here. I said, and he says, okay. And I said, well, that's the one I want. He says, well, you can't take it home with you today. And I said, well, how come I can't take it home? He says, well, that kitten doesn't know you. It has to get to know you. You're going to have to come and spend time with it every day for about a week before you take it home. So because it's afraid of you and it doesn't know you. And I looked at him. I said, man, are you crazy? I said, I can't come out here and spend time with this cat every day. I have a job. Are you nuts? And he said, a job? You have a job? He says, well, if you have a job, who's going to be at home with the cat? I said, nobody's going to be at home with the cat. I said, what are you talking about? I said, if I don't work, the cat can't work. Somebody has to work to feed me and the cat. And he's like, well, I can't, that's against the rules. No animal can be at home by itself. Somebody has to be there with you. I said, are you nuts? And so there's some more people there. They were there looking, and they looked at me like I was the one crazy. So I have taken time off my job. And I told this man over the phone I was coming to get this cat. And then he's going to tell me, I can't take the cat home. First of all, I couldn't take it home because the cat didn't know me. And I needed to bond with this cat and come every day for a week and spend time with the cat. And when I told him I didn't have the time because I had a job, he wasn't, well, who's going to be at home? Well, you can't work and have a pet too. I said, so how are people supposed to feed these animals if someone doesn't have a job? So I get home and I'm just furious. I'm just furious because I've wasted my time and I hate wasting time. So I go over to my neighbors and I said, I went to the animal shelter to try to get a cat. And this man tells me that if I have a job, I can't have a pet. She said, well, I could have told you that, Pat. That's the rules here. You can't have I said, what do you mean? She says, the law is someone has to always be at home with a pet in the UK, in England anyway. So at either one person doesn't work or you can't have a pet, you have to wait till you retire. Or they're called pensioners. I said, that's crazy. And she said, if you do have a pet and you go to work and your neighbors know that you're leaving your pet at home, they will call the authorities on you and report you for leaving that cat or dog at home by itself. I was like, I cannot believe this. This does not make sense. But then she told me one more thing. And if you go to the website, you can check it out and it is true. She says, but not only that, before they would even let you bring a pet home, they have to come and inspect your home and see is it, fit for an animal. So let me get this straight. You're living in a home with your family. You, your spouse, your kids, and that house is good enough for you. But they have to make sure that that home is good enough for a cat. This is how these people are in the UK. Now that's, to me, I thought was nuts. So I didn't get my animal. So that's another thing that I learned over in the UK. Okay, so you also have to know like I said, I learned a lot of words from my friends. And some of the words are just nuts. It's hilarious, but it's one thing I learned about the English language. They are correct when they use certain words. Now, when we use words, we use the first two definitions. But I learned that when they say a word means something, just like when I said hire a car, I said that was nuts. But if you read the definition, like the third or the fourth definition, it will line up. So they're not using the wrong definitions. It's just that we use the first two definitions. Oh, so let me tell you about this. So I'm a supply chain manager, and one of my suppliers was down in Manchester. That's just one of them. And he uses aluminum to make the parts. He's manufacturing his parts. And I was down there in his facility, and he was taking me through, and he was saying, aluminium. And I said, what? I said, isn't that aluminum? He says, it's aluminium. So that's another word. They call it aluminium, not aluminum. So, okay. So I remember the first time I was in a store looking for some canned goods. Now, they have a store called ASDA, A-S-D-A. That's the Walmart in the UK. And I was going through the rows, and I didn't see it. So you know how you look at the names of the rows, you look up to see what's on the row. And I was saying, I wonder what they call canned goods. What would they call that? So I'm just standing and I'm reading all the signs, and I see something that says tin. And I remember my parents always called a can a tin can. I said, I wonder, is that where the canned goods are? And sure enough, when I got over to the row with the tin, there was the canned goods. So they don't call them canned goods, they call them tin goods. Tin vegetables in a tin, something like that. And nail polish, we call fingernail polish, they call nail varnish. So you had to figure that out as well. But one of my friends called me one day, one of my English friends, British friends, and she says, Pat, can you come get me and take me such and such a place? Because my husband and I, we had a bad row. I said, what's that? What's a row? Well, a row is an argument. So you get in a row with somebody, you've had an argument. So, some of my friends, I had one friend, she liked to text me. She's busy, I was busy. But she would text me these long text messages using all these phrases, and I didn't understand what she was talking about. So I would text her back and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand what this means. You're going to have to call me and tell me what this means. So those are some of the things I experienced while living in the UK as well. Learned some funny words, funny driving. But I was able to drive, like I say, day one. But some of my colleagues' wives were afraid. They didn't drive the entire time over there. Let me tell you about this. This is another thing. Now, listen. So I'm on the motorway every morning, and it's pretty dark or whatever when I would leave, and I would get in the middle lane. And it wouldn't hardly be anybody on the motorway. So it'd be like the other two lanes would just be completely, nothing in them. And every morning, so a car, would be coming real fast behind me. And now you got 2 free lanes. All you had to do but they wouldn't do it. They'd get right up on me, and they would do their lights like they wanted me to do something. And I'm thinking, why don't you just get over? So I would just keep going. So eventually, they would be right behind me. They would get over. Then they would come back, get in front of me. Then they would get over. So listen. In the UK, it's opposite. So the fast lane is the right lane, and the slowest lane, the far right lane, is the fastest lane, and the far left lane is the slow lane. So it's backwards. Okay, it's opposite of the US. So they'd get right behind me every morning. Somebody would do that, and I'm thinking, why did they get behind me to begin with? They got all these lanes, and so they would get behind me, get right up on me. And then they would get over to the right lane. Then they would come back over and get in front of me. Then they would get over to the left lane. So finally, I was in one of my British colleagues' offices at work, and I said, let me ask you something. I said, every morning, this is what's going on, and I explained to them what happened. They said, because the rule is you cannot be going faster than the person in the lane next to me. So the fastest lane was the far right. I should have been in the far left lane, and because they were going faster than me in the middle, and I was in the middle lane, I was supposed to get over to the far left and let them through, because I wouldn't, and they couldn't legally pass me because you're not supposed to be going faster than the person in the lane next to you, something like that. So that's why they kept doing the playing checkers every morning. So that was one of the rules with the driving. I think I was going to say something else, but I might have forgotten what I was going to say. But the driving was also another thing. They have these cameras everywhere over there on the streets, these cameras. And so a couple of mornings, every morning I would get to a certain spot and a flash would go off. And I didn't know it was a camera. I just be light go. So I got to work and I told my colleagues, I said, every morning I get to a certain spot and there's this big flash. They said, they're taking your picture, Pat. I said, why? She said, you're probably speeding. Now the speed limit was really slow and I might have been going 1 kilometer or whatever over. But that's all it took to get the light flash. And so I got a ticket in the mail. It comes right in the mail. And it was like 100 pounds. And so I started paying really close attention. Then I wouldn't go 1 kilometer or whatever, speed limit or whatever, over. Because there you go. So that's another thing. Driving in the UK, the roundabouts are very dangerous and they're very confusing. The animal shelter is a joke. They want you to have a job. You can't have a job and have an animal. The animal has to be with you 24/7. Has to be babysat like a child. So those are the other some more things I learned. It was so much. so much. I had a good time. I learned a lot of things, and I just wanted to follow up on some. So I thought about some of this, and I said, well, let me tell them about this. But I just wanted to follow up on that. Have a blessed day.